pay to pay for the eventual total of your groceries. But I think there was also a facial recognition system that you would just have to look into a screen and it would obviously recognize your face, and then the total would be subtracted from that. So I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I haven't had anybody actually use it. So maybe you could touch on that, because I think it's just kind of a very interesting, different technology that maybe the West isn't super used to yet.
Oh yeah, it was so fascinating. So I've been to actually Alibaba's headquarters, and facial recognition was just left and right. I mean, it's what they use to enter the campus.
Yeah.
Now, it's not required, it's not every employee did it, but many did, and I could see why. Your company knows what your face looks like already. So, so it was really interesting. I mean, I would see people with Starbucks, right? They would get their Starbucks for them and their colleagues. Their hands are full, right? So they just walk onto campus. They don't even blink an eye because the camera just detects them, and then the bar is open and they're able to enter the campus. Same thing with the cafeteria at Alibaba. Same thing at Xiaomi. I visited Xiaomi, Huawei. I mean, all these companies are using Baidu was a big one, the Google of China.
Right.
They were really into facial recognition. I mean, even the vending machines had facial recognition. So you click on the drink you want, you show your face, and within seconds, you have your drink in hand. So for them, it is becoming very, very common and popular. And I see why. It's extremely convenient. If the security is good, then why not? If I don't have to get out a wallet and a credit card and swipe a piece of plastic, great. So that's what we've traditionally done. Right now, we're moving toward mobile payments, where it's like Apple Pay. We can quickly just show our cell phone. But in China, China skipped the kind of has been in mobile payments for years and years now. But now it seems to be getting more and more toward pay with your face. And so yeah, that you could do that at the Alibaba Hema store. You could do that, I think, at some KFCs as well in China. I mean, I've even saw it at McDonald's on a kiosk. Pay with face was an option. So it seems like it's very convenient, and and I can see why people would choose to do it. And then of course you have a lot less privacy concerns in general in China than you do in the West, which is quite interesting as well. But yeah, I mean, I personally am fascinated and kind of excited for pay with face technology, especially because it's novel right now. But I think it's the future, and I think it's very kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think it'll be also really interesting to kind of follow and then see whether the West actually fully adopts it, right? Especially over COVID, there were lots of concerns of using facial recognition for tracking whether people were actually sick, or they had like a fever, or they looked potentially sick. So I think there were a lot of like bans on facial recognition, certainly here in Europe. So there was like a regression away from this technology. But I think this might actually be one of the first times that I've heard that facial recognition is so much more convenient. I actually hadn't thought of it before, but it makes complete sense. If your hands are full, right? You're not going to put down your grocery bags or your coffee or whatever. You're just going to look into a screen and take the picture and then move on. So yeah, I think it'll be quite interesting to see if the cultural shift happens.
Yeah, and think about this. I mean, so many airports use it now. It's like I just flew out of Dubai, and it's like you have to, every single person, you show your passport, and then you show your face, and then it opens the gate, right?
Yeah.
That might feel weird 5 years ago, but I think it starts with government entities like or like things like airports, right? Like we have to use the airport, we and it's a security thing, and it makes our life more convenient. So then we get comfortable with it, and then slowly over time we are more comfortable with it in other facets, like a grocery store. I like to use the example of maybe 10-15 years ago, you would search a flight New York to LA, and then you go to a few other websites, and all of a sudden you see a banner ad for flights from New York to LA. That creeped us out. Remember how weird that was, how invasive that was? And now it's like we don't blink an eye. So that's kind of just how technology is adopted. And I think you're exactly right. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens here in the US and in the West in general, because government regulation. I think there was just a county in Washington state that said to do a complete ban on facial recognition technology. Even Amazon Go, I know a few years ago, faced a lawsuit in the city of San Francisco because they were saying, hey, this store is discrimination against people without, credit, right? If you don't have a
Right,
credit
right,
card,
right, right.
how the heck do you use this store? So I'm not sure what the outcome was, but I think Amazon had to create some sort of thing where people could top up with cash at another store and then be able to use the store or something, right? So there are certainly these things that are going to and are already, let's say, I don't want to say inhibiting, but like definitely slowing down the rate of technological acceptance by the
Yeah,
West.
yeah,
That's just not going to happen in China, for better or worse. I'm sure a lot of people listening are cringing at how pro this technology I am, and saying, what about privacy, slippery slope this and all
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But I think one thing yeah, go ahead. I'll stop.
No, no, no. I was just completely agreeing with you. I mean, I think this is one of the things. Whenever the discussion around data privacy and data security comes around, it's the conversation always goes towards the differences between China and specifically the United States, right? So, and then you can even talk about Europe, which I think is even more concerned about the data privacy of the individual citizens. But yeah, I think the one thing that I always go to is like, what is going to be the impact on the actual development of the and acceptance of the technology, and then what are the ramifications of that for society? Like, is China just going to become more efficient, more productive because of these technologies that, even though they infringe on the individual kind of sovereignty of the human being, it enables a much more, I guess, fluid or efficient and productive society on like many different aspects. I don't know if you have an answer for that, but it's always a place that these conversations go to for me, anyways.
Yeah, no, I have actually a lot of thoughts on that. I mean, the first is when I would film at these tech companies in their campus, I would go to like Baidu, as I mentioned, Huawei,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and I would just go up to employees that are sitting at their desk and just start filming them. And I've been to many offices in Europe and US and China for CNBC as a reporter, and
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
filmed them, obviously with the permission of the PR person and the company and all that kind of guiding me around. But I know, like, if I do that in the US, people look up and then their colleague has to say, oh, they're shooting for CNBC, or
Yeah.
and sometimes people will say, I don't want to be filmed. Like, what the heck? I'm at work. Who is this?
Mm-hmm.
In China, Mark, people don't even look up.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't believe I'm just like, 2 feet away from their desk filming them, a stranger filming them as they're working. They're not even curious what's going on. They just could care less
So
because
different. Yeah.
yeah, they just don't have a sense of why am I being filmed? They just do not, in general, they do not say that, the ones that I've come into contact with. And I would, as an American who lived in Asia for 4 years, I would get into debates with my friends because of how kind of bullish I was on this future technologies. And they
Mm-hmm.
would say, how can you say this? Privacy concerns this, slippery slope that. And I think the reason that I have become kind of, very accepting of these future technologies is because of what I saw with safety and security.
Okay.
When you think about, the unfortunate shootings, random mass shootings we have in the United States, when you think about, unfortunately school shootings that occurred, it's like imagine if we could reduce a lot of these things because of technology. That's I mean,
Yeah.
of course I'm oversimplifying the problem, but that's just really where my head's at. And it's also, as a journalist, right, I've talked to a lot of people in China, a lot of foreigners who are living in China. One executive that comes to mind, he's originally Australian, he's raised his 2 kids in Shanghai, and he was telling me he goes to London and there was a street fight, a bar fight or whatever, and his kids were literally shaking so hard because they just didn't see anything. Like, they don't even hear
Right.
sirens in
Right.
Shanghai. And so and he was thinking, like, how lucky I am to be raising my kids in a place where I never have to worry about their safety, and crime rates and things like that. But he also was concerned too. So when he got back to Shanghai, he would make his little kids watch like cops shows, just to like toughen them up a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
say, like,
Expose
hey,
them to the real world a little bit. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But so hearing somebody like him, who arguably started out being pro privacy, pro this,
Mm-hmm.
and how his perception was changed because he was able to appreciate all the advantages of a more secure world. It's kind of like, with going through the airport security, right? It's like I don't feel like it's an invasion of privacy because I understand the greater good of this technology is, and these inconvenience are to keep me safe in the sky, right? And as long as we don't have anything to hide, then why should we, then why should I kick and scream? And so I think, that's kind of where my mindset goes, just to a more, maybe the next degree of that.
Yeah.
But that's why I think two things. I think a lot of this technology is coming, with or without our approval, and I see the benefits of why it's coming, and that's kind of my stance.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. I also think it's quite it's unique and interesting to hear somebody who has maybe a different perspective from like many of the people. Like, of course, I interview many people from the Western world on the podcast, and as I mentioned before, like one of the main concerns is, of course, data privacy. So we need to stop either facial recognition or other technologies that are going to come out that are going to, yeah, cause potential long-term problems for the individual. And then the argument is always, well, safety issues are great, but that's just kind of I think it's a red herring, right? It's leading us to this eventual. I mean, there's lots of people that talk about these, digital surveillance states, but they're using the argument of safety and security to get us to these places. But I do think it always is interesting and relevant to kind of hear the opposite side, that for yourself that you've actually experienced this kind of culture, and for others that have experienced both cultures as well, and they have the perspective of, oh, okay, maybe sometimes the security is actually better if we're talking about kids or other situations like that.
Yeah, and I know I get it's controversial, especially as an American saying that, but yeah, I guess it just comes down to ultimately like having my phone snatched out of my hand while walking through London versus like living in Singapore. And literally I did a video on this where I left my phone, laptop, and even wallet on a table, and then I went and ordered lunch 100 feet away or whatever, and then came back and then proved, yep, it's all there. It's, I mean, one of the lowest crime rates in the world. So but of course, there are things that need to be considered, and I appreciate the debate. Let's just
it's very important, I think.
Yes, it is important.
Whichever side you take, it's important to talk about.
Agreed.